3.5 years ago, I received an email that the very first conference paper that I've submitted as a PhD candidate was accepted. I was very glad, not only because I was going to a conference to present my research, but also because the conference was in Japan. Japan has always seemed to be a very magical, enigmatic, almost mysterious place to me. And I was really looking forward to the travel. I've never been to Japan before. In fact, at that time, I haven't been anywhere as far. So I boarded the plane to Tokyo filled with excitement. One day, when the conference program was over, a colleague of mine and I decided to go sightseeing. We took a train to a place called Karatsu. And Karatsu is a city that is famous for a place called Niji-no-Matsubara, which is referred to as the black pine tree forest of 1 million trees. When we reached Niji-no-Matsubara, my breath was taken away. The beautiful, tall trees that stretched just to the sky, the sun that made everything around glitter. Perfect day, white sand, fresh air, seawater. It was truly divine. I've never experienced anything like that. We walked, we had interesting conversation, we laughed, we had some local food, and then we took train back to the conference venue. During the conference dinner, another colleague of mine asked me, "I heard you went to Niji-no-Matsubara. How was your experience?" And what I replied to her was, "It was really great. I walked 26,000 steps there." I don't remember what she said. I don't remember what she replied. But I don't think it was a particularly long conversation. In fact, not any other conversation we had in 3.5 years' time. My very elaborate and very well-reflected story of 26,000 steps did not strike any interest. And I realized later that, it would be strange if it did. What I didn't realize at the time is that why was I even talking about 26,000 steps at the first place? From every impression that I got that day, from every memory, from all the metaphors I could have used, I talked about the steps. I didn't talk about the tall trees stretching to the sky. I didn't talk about sun that made everything glitter. I didn't talk about the crabs or whatever looked like crabs. I talked about the steps. I mean, what is it even indicative of? Besides the obvious fact that I'm not very good at small talk and I need to invest some time in social skills. I really tried over the last 3.5 years. Reflection about the experience in terms of numbers, thinking and talking about your experience in terms of certain metrics, is indicative of quantification culture we live in. And by quantification culture, I mean our obsession with measuring things. We are very used, over the course of history, to measure productivity, progress, academic achievement, to assign numbers to these things. Recently, with the help of different wearable devices, such as Fitbits of the world, and different self-tracking apps that we have on our smartphones, we became very accustomed to measuring different aspects of our life. I mean, think about it. We think about walking in terms of steps. We think about eating in terms of calories we consume. We think about sleeping in terms of minutes we spent in one or another sleeping stage. With my colleagues at BI Norwegian Business School and Harvard University, I'm looking at this phenomena of experience quantification and what it does to us. What it does to us, to the way we think, to the way we behave, to the way we feel about ourselves. In one of the projects that we are currently working on, we are looking into a question, what is experience quantification doing to our self of self-humanness? The project started with a very simple idea, that human experience is a very complex thing. A colleague of mine likes to say that human experience is like soup. You have a set of ingredients, you have a set of condiments, Maybe you have a set of secret ingredients that you add. You also have a set of ingredients that are pretty much, oh, I have it in my fridge, it's about to expire, so I'd rather use it here and now. The human experience is exactly the same thing. It's messy, it's subjective, it's complex, it's multidimensional. Our ability to live through these different experiences, ability to feel different things, is what makes us human. So we asked ourselves a question: what happens if we assign a number to an experience, if we quantify it, if we try to represent it through a certain metric? We took that question and we went to a research lab to conduct an experiment. We invited people to our lab. We didn't disclose the exact purpose of the study in the beginning, but we said that they would participate in the study about physical activity. We explained that we were interested in how walking would affect their behavior later, so doing some physical activity at the workplace, for example. We created a route in the building where the lab was located. We taped different arrows on the floor, and we explained to participants that they would have to go for a walk in the building, and the walk could constitute approximately 700 meters. When the participants arrived to our lab, we divided them randomly in two different groups. In the experiment group, we provided participants with a wearable device, with a device that would quantify their experience, because their walking will be represented in terms of steps. In the control group, we didn't hand any of the device like that. Participants from both groups went for exactly the same walk. They were provided with exactly the same instructions. The only difference was that the first group, the experiment group, were exposed to experience quantification. When people came back from walking and entered our lab, we asked them to fill in a survey. And the most important question that we asked was, how human do you feel? We asked them things like, how warm do you feel? How responsive do you feel? Do you feel that your experience has depth? We also asked them whether they identify more with humans, machines, or robots. Our findings suggested that people from the experiment group, people who had the device with them while walking, people who were exposed to experience quantification, identified less as human and more like a machine in comparison to people from control group. A very brief exposure to experience quantification. The walk took approximately 5 minutes, 7 minutes. And after this experience quantification, they already felt a little bit dehumanized. They felt more like machines and less like humans. The interesting question is, of course, why is that the case? Why did that happen? And I believe it has to do with what defines us as humans. Complexity of experience. Ability to experience different things, different emotions, it's what makes us who we are. If I think about my walk at Niži Nombatsubara, it was not as much about 26,000 steps, but about everything that happened in those 26,000 steps. My experience was complex, and quantification simplified it. It made it less meaningful. My walk at Niži Nombatsubara was not about steps as much as it was about experiencing nature, experiencing new culture, getting to know a colleague of mine who later became one of the best friends I've ever had. We have a lot of devices, wearable devices today, and digital self-tracking apps that quantify our experience on a daily basis. And maybe in some environments, that's not a bad thing at all. But when it comes to our leisure activities and experience, maybe we could be a little bit more reflective and consider unfollowing this quantification trend in order to preserve the beauty of complexity. Thank you.